Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Rike Thor 6. Why is that knife so expensive? Let's get this out of the way right off the bat. This is legitimately an integral. It is not seam construction. It's not two-piece. These titanium frames are milled. Yes, milled, not cast. I have confirmed this with Rike. They are milled from single blocks of titanium. So despite the fact that, these are made in China, and, making things in China is, a less expensive process than making things in, say, the United States, it is still a ridiculously expensive process to mill this, whether you love it or hate it, to mill this from a single block of titanium. An integral, when compared to the exact same knife made with two pieces, is always factually more expensive to do. So this is a polarizing aesthetic, and a lot of people will probably have, an issue, a personal issue with not wanting to spend that much on something that looks like this, and I think that that's perfectly fine, because this is, the aesthetic of something is entirely subjective, whether or not it looks good to you or doesn't. But I know that that's going to be a big, like, oh my gosh, what the heck, kind of moment for a lot of people. So I wanted to explain that right off the bat. Now, I have a lot to say about this, and I also have more to say about the price tag. I'm going to share all of that with you guys in today's review. Thanks so much to Rike for sending these in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. I'm going to get this green guy out of the way, and we'll bring him back here in just a moment. We're just going to keep one out here while we do specs and size comparisons. Overall length of the Thor 6, this is a full-size knife. It comes in at 8¼ inches. Blade length is coming in at 3.5. Cutting edge at 3.35. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So up against the 80-10 and the 80-20.5, it's longer than the 80-20.5, but this knife doesn't carry large. It actually carries fairly compact. I think it's hard for your brain to focus on the size of it when you're looking at how loud the aesthetic is, but it legitimately does not carry like a large knife. Obviously, nowhere near the size of something like the 80-10. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised to see how close it is in size to the Spyderco PM2. It has way more cutting edge. So yeah, it's a PM2 size knife. Let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action on this knife? So if you've ever handled a Rike knife, then you'll know they make really, really nice stuff. I mean, they are capable of some of the most precision machining. There's some new players. There's some new players that popped on the scene in 2024 that made people go, whoa. But Rike is still up there in, peak machining quality. Sorry, my dog's still barking. It's very cold in Kansas, and he does not like when he has to stay inside. So you guys might hear him bark or howl throughout this review. But anyways, they are, one of the top players. Rike knives tend to be a little bit tight out of the box, and I think, if you have purchased Rike knives, and you'll know that. Lock bar tension on this is also super heavy. So you can see here, the relief cut is on the inside, and it's quite a ways up in the middle of the frame. They left quite a bit of material there, so you can feel it. It takes a lot to push that lock bar over. So the pivot is smooth. It's not quite fall shut, but I can tell you it's just tightness. This will definitely smooth out. The flipper tab is a little bit angular because of where you're expected to put it. You can light switch it, but your finger's naturally going to want to do this, right? And transitioning over this spot right here, it's a little teeny. I wish they would have rounded that off just a little bit more, right? But it's fine. You can make do. If you're constantly sitting there flipping it on your couch like 10, 20, 30 times, yeah, your finger's gonna get a little tired. Can you use this slot to reverse flick it? Yes, you can. But if your finger is not practiced, if this finger is not muscled up from whatever other knives you've been carrying, that might prove to be a little bit difficult. Forward flicking it, probably not going to happen because there's not a lot of areas to catch easily with the angle that you have to push it on. But getting under here, really low, get that leverage. I actually missed it there. It's still pretty heavy. It's a little bit easier. So To recap, the action's a little tight. It's slightly uncomfortable to flip the knife. The detent is, honestly, I'd call that medium heavy, right? So it's not necessarily working perfectly in your favor. So yeah, the action's good. It's okay. It's not perfect. I think some people find it a little bit, a little bit just not the most comfortable experience, not the most satisfying experience, but still fine. And there's plenty of room for break-in. Sorry again. He just really wants to go outside. Every time I let him out there, he runs out there and he's like, oh yeah, this is uncomfortable. But anyways, let's do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here it is a little bit thicker, but this is all radiused. I mean, geez, it's kind of hard to tell with all the, everything that's going on, but it is actually radius. It's not flat, which is an even more, the machines required to do that are even more expensive than the machines that mill flat surfaces, right? So all contributing to the final price tag. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. So yeah, it's not a cumbersome sized object to carry. In and out of the pocket with all of those ribs. I'm in athletic shorts today. Can you feel, not athletic pants today. Can you feel them? Yes. In and out of the pocket every single time. And there, that pocket clip is tight. So, it's not going to be the friendliest. Like, it is a little bit pinchy. I can get it in and out, right? But, if you're somebody who really nitpicks the convenience and the smoothness, the in and out experience of a pocket knife and, pocket clip combination, this might bother you a little bit. Far from impossible. You have to be, if you're just super nitpicky, if you zero in on that experience, then that might bother you. Let's do a hardware check. Looks like a super complicated knife to disassemble, right? No, because it's an integral. So in this case, you literally just have the hidden pocket clip screw, which you can access through here because it's all been opened up. And then you have the pivot, and then there's the access pivot piece, but that's it. There's no, you don't need any other screws. You have to screw for the lock bar insert, but there's no screws on the frame because the frame is all one solid piece, which is a benefit of a titanium integral. Now you're having to pay quite a bit of money for that benefit, right? But it is so, like, if you go ahead and if you're like me and you just like integrals because they're cool, right? Then an added bonus is you don't have to mess with body screws. So we'll put it that way. The pivot, get out my tools. My tools are very inexpensive, very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. The pivot is a T8. Yeah. You have a T8 pivot. This is, that looks like a T6. Yeah, right, T6. So yeah, very easy. If you have to take it apart, most of the time, hot, soapy water, blow it out with compressed air, add some lubrication, you're good. But if you really do want to take the blade out, it's one screw. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's measure the blade stock thickness. It's going to be a little tricky because you got to grab the flat down there. We have, it's actually thicker than I thought it would be, 154 thousandths. Okay. And let's weigh it. Titanium, we have M390, which you can see right here. These are numbered, by the way. They're limited, which is typical of Rike and stuff like this. M390 HRC. Everything that I can find, they don't. I'm always on this with Rike. Like wherever your products are, whether it's your side or the Ketro side or wherever, list the HRC range. List it. Don't make people hunt for it. Other retailers have it listed. Other places have it listed. They typically run their M390 from 60 to 61, but you guys need to list it. Put that on your website. I don't know why. Like so many different companies make people hunt for that HRC range, but that's what we're looking at there. I do not have testing equipment to be able to test this. Some other channels do. I do not. But I still would like to see it listed. 3.4 ounces, no surprise there, given the amount of machining and the amount of material that's actually been removed from this frame to achieve this aesthetic. So this has really, really nice ratios, and actually the balance on it is about as perfect as you could hope for. That's really cool. Okay, we've done the hardware check. We've checked the blade stock thickness. We've weighed it. Let's move into the meat and potatoes here. Look at this one right here. Wow, this looks like paint. It's actually anodizing and black washing. Almost looks kind of like something that would come out of a cartoon. And this has probably been said many times in the comments section, but yes, This design was, as far as I know, inspired by the Alien movies, so it does look like an alien. Rike has a knife called the Alien that looks similar. That's because Richard Wu designed them both. So yeah, if if those puzzle pieces hadn't quite come together for you, there you go. I get it. No, I get it. That's kind of like the knee-jerk reaction to seeing stuff like this. You just relate it to whatever in reality looks like it. It's like when we talk about the Rike Cybertrix, people like to point out that it looks like the Cybertruck, and that is not a coincidence. It was designed to look like the Cybertruck. It even has one of the same words in the title. But sometimes, sometimes that part doesn't click. Sometimes we just immediately are like, hey, it looks like the same thing. Yeah, for sure. I think that's really cool. Not everybody is going to be all about the super colorful, we're going to get, I'd say the more common knee-jerk reaction we're going to get is that looks like a gas station knife, that's just something people say when they feel like, it's like the dog and the bell thing. Like people have been trained to kind of say that whenever something doesn't look like a rectangle handle and triangle blade and as plain as possible. Thank goodness that gas station aesthetic is with us, because holy God, would the knife world be boring. Am I right? I know I'm right. But anyways, yeah, it is going to be a polarizing aesthetic. I'm not saying you have to like this. I mean, it's wild. It's loud. Not everybody wants something like this in their pocket knife. And that's part of the reason why these are limited. There is no reason to manufacture these things endlessly, because there aren't enough people out there to want to pick these up. These are specifically going to be purchased by enthusiasts and collectors who, number one, love Rike and their complex machining, their quality manufacturing. They like integrals. They like things that have a bit of a science fiction aesthetic, right? And they, of course, like pocket knives. These are fully usable pocket knives. They're not delicate in any way. Quite the opposite. So yeah, they are not made for everybody. They are made very specifically for a small audience of enthusiasts and collectors who still want their collection pieces to be usable. And so yeah, I think they nailed that. We have a hand rub satin finish on this guy, and then this guy's got kind of what looks like a glass bead blast. Kind of like this finish a little bit more. To my knowledge, all of the configurations cost the same amount. So whether you get the plain Jane tie one or you get the the green and black, there's a purple and black or red and black, I can't remember what the exact color, but there's 4 different configurations. They're all exactly the same price tag, so that's great. As far as actually using and cutting with this, the blade shape outside, like if you remove this part back, like this weird alien spine, this is a pretty utilitarian blade shape, and honestly, I like it. Nose is down, so you can do draw cuts. You got some belly. It's not super thin behind the edge. It's also not incredibly thick. Factory edge is okay. It's all right. Touch this up a little bit. Some people are going to be a little bit picky with it. You can see there, it slices. It just lifts the edge just a little bit. So this, if you actually plan to use this, then you'll plan to touch it up. You'll plan to sharpen it. Far from the worst factory cutting edge ever. I'd probably give it a C or a C plus, right? And then the thing, like I said, I mean, it's a utilitarian blade shape, just kind of like middle of the road. It will definitely work. And there's nothing in the cutting path outside of this opening hole right here, and all the edges are nicely knocked down. So it's pretty easy to use. I really don't have a problem with it. It's going to do exactly what you'd expect. It's not like specifically specialized to do anything in particular. It's just a typical, tried and true EDC blade shape. So I appreciate that it is M390 and that they have hit right there where you would expect kind of the beginning of the good range for M390 to be in terms of HRC. They always put the name of the knife on the knife, and while I appreciate that it is small and in cursive, which is something Rike likes to do, I wish that it just wasn't there. I just don't need the name of the knife to be on the knife. I don't need it. And then M390, and then the number back here. I can't even see that zoomed up. Number 47, is that what that says? Those of you watching on giant TVs will be able to see. I can't even, my eyesight. God, I got to 37, and I was like, man, my eyesight's amazing, And then it was like overnight, and it was like, crappy. I'm going to need glasses by the time I'm 40. What's going on? In my mind, I'm 24. Reading books. Reading books to my kids at night. I'm like, what does that say? Who's there with me in their late 30s? It's rough. It's rough. Anyways. Just, I suppose I could zoom in, right? We could do this all together. Let's zoom in and find out exactly what. Oh, that's so much better. I can see that clear as day. I just took 3.5 times zoom, and we can see here that this says number 83. I guess. Still a little bit blurry if I'm being honest. And this says number 57 or 67. Everybody's going to make fun of me now. Gosh darn it. When I started this channel, I was still a young man. Okay? When I started this channel, I was 30. It's been a long road. Okay. But anyways, yeah, a lot of detail, a lot of, Richard Wu and Andre de Villiers, people always bring up the Scavenger. Guess who made that? Guess who OEM'd that for ADV? Rike. So if you find that there's visual similarities, yeah, there are. Rike is the OEM for that knife. A lot of people think that that was a custom knife that was made, that Andre de Villiers hammered that thing out. No, Rike manufactured that. The Alien, right? This aesthetic is specific to. I think there's other companies who have tried to do something similar, but this particular exact look, it all comes from Rike. So, but it is cool, definitely, and it's wild. Whether you love it or hate it, the amount of work here. This isn't a simple thing. Anybody who works with, I'm not a professional on CNC stuff, but I have definitely got some pretty wild and in-depth insight talking with all of the different OEMs and knife makers. It is not as simple as pushing a button and a machine just magically poops out whatever you want. The time under the machine, right? The accuracy, whether or not the machine's been calibrated properly, right? The money that it costs to maintain this equipment and have it function properly, right? There's cost to everything that these machines create. And so, yeah, it is not like a magic. It's not a magic lamp with a genie inside who can just poop out whatever you want and it costs nothing. I don't know how people could logically come to that conclusion, but it turns out social media is full of people who think that. So bless you. But this is not a cheap thing to create. If this exact knife were manufactured in the United States, you would easily be looking at $900, $1,000. I mean, this is expensive, right? Not for everybody, and not everybody needs. I mean, hardly anybody needs this. I don't think anybody needs it, But yeah, not cheap to do. Really cool looking anodizing too. I like that sort of. In areas it almost looks like it's purple, and you like here on these little edges right there, you have sort of this purpley blue, and then it changes. I mean, we have tricolor in this. It's really, really neat. Absolutely wild, hyper precise. No part of this has machining flaws. The cutting bevel, all of that, all of these areas are just perfect, right? And that's what you'd expect paying this much money. It looks like, I know a lot of people are going to point out that looks like it's a seam. It is not. That's simply where everything just sort of peaks together. But you can see right here as we wrap around that there is absolutely no seam. It is all legitimately one piece of material. They have integrated this pocket clip nicely into the design, which is awkward because you have these ribs running down and then you have to have this piece of material that goes over it. And they have done, similar machining, this sort of spine bone. They've integrated that into the pocket clip, and that's neat. Super tight, really, really tight on the clip. They also managed to put a little lanyard hole on there if you want to, attach a tail to your alien blade. But yeah, the pocket clip looks cool and it goes along with the theme. It's just really tight and not super comfortable. I mean, ergonomically, how does this thing feel? It feels like you're holding on to a small alien rib cage. I mean, that's what it feels like. That's made out of titanium. It's not nearly as uncomfortable as you might guess outside of this area right here, which is essentially this 90-degree area that's just sharp because of how they've done the flipper tab. So that's not incredibly comfortable. And this, while it doesn't really serve as jimping, it's just uncomfortable. I'll just be real, right? So it's not the most comfortable knife in the world, but it's not quite as uncomfortable as you would expect. But I would say just picking this thing up and holding it without looking at it, my first impression would be, this feels odd. What's going on with the handle? Goose, I know, bud, I'm sorry. It's too cold outside, man. I'm sure he's confused because my voice is coming out through the floor. Yeah, it's not incredibly comfortable. It's kind of what you would expect. Steel lock bar insert. The doubles as the over travel stop. So that's great. That's what we want to see. We have a stop pin located in its traditional position with actually some nice shouldering there. This does run on bearings. You probably could have guessed that. No blade play up, down, left, or right. No lock stick. No double clutch. No pivot lash. Tight but smooth. Not gritty. Poor guy. It's like, I just really want to go outside. Nice clicky detent right here. We have perfect centering on both. I'll let you guys look right here. I'm so sorry about my dog. The other one's real quiet. There's actually two of them up there, and the other one does not care at all. She does not want to be outside. But yeah, it's all what you'd expect, right? Final price tag, $465. Is that a fair price tag? If your logic is, I don't like how that looks and I don't want to pay that much money, that's fine. That's a personal preference. But because you don't like the way that something looks does not mean that it should cost less. The reality of it is that it just isn't for you, which is something that, it shouldn't be hard to accept. It's just not for you, right? But factually, these do cost more to produce, whether you like the look of them or not. They do cost more to produce than a standard sandwich construction or pillar construction pocket knife, utilizing the same materials. The fact that the exact same thing made with two pieces and standoffs or two pieces and a backspacer would probably cost $285 to $300, maybe $320, realistically, with all of the milling. That's true, right? It's the same materials, and it would cost less. And if you don't care about the integral nature of it, if this existed, then you could choose that one. It doesn't matter that they're made with the same materials. It matters the process and the costs involved with the process, right? You might be thinking, who would pay more for something that offers very, very little advantage? And the truth is, a ton of people. Integrals are not new. They're incredibly popular, and knife enthusiasts enjoy them simply because it's an interesting element, right? Whether or not it adds any specific utility at this price point kind of goes out the window. At this price point, with pocket knives in general, there are tons of elements that don't have anything to do with utility. If you're only interested in the utility of a pocket knife, number one, I'm not sure why you clicked on this video, but number two, that can be had for right around $30 to $50, just pure utility. I mean, that's where that is. As prices increase, you're much more likely to see elements that have absolutely nothing to do with utility, and that's because the people buying that stuff specifically want added non-utilitarian elements that are more personalized, more aesthetic, and more, just embellishment based. So, but anyways, $465, do I think that's a fair price tag? Well, my bar for a Chinese integral, if it's, if you make a perfectly flat rectangular handle with absolutely no special milling or anything like that, and then you just attach the world's simplest blade to it, I think you can get quite a ways under $400. $400 is kind of like where I expect to see this stuff, but I also expect to see some level of effort, some level of, machining impressiveness, I guess. So yeah, can Chinese titanium and M390 integrals be made for less than $400? Yeah, absolutely. I think you can get quite a ways under that. I think you can accomplish it for, like around $300 if you go as simple as possible. Probably not much of a market for that, honestly. It's just, it gets too plain, right? So that's why we see these come in at about $400. The most impressive Chinese integral in that territory that I have seen is the Rike Thor, which I talk about all the time. That is an absolutely incredible feat for a final price tag of about $380, $385. It's amazing. My design, my Excalibur is also an integral, right? Vanax, you have the DLC optional, but our entry-level price on that was $400. That was very, very difficult to get all of that done. Everything I wanted to do with that knife and actually get it to that price tag. It was very illuminating, the costs associated with getting all of that done. Do I find this to be on the same? I find this to be quite a bit more complicated than my own design. And while it doesn't have the DLC or anything, it does have a lot more milling, way more. I think it's very easy to see that this is much more costly milling than creating something like mine, which has texturing and it's a lot of material, right? But it's nowhere near as complicated. So that price tag isn't going to be super appealing to very many people. Is it justified? Yeah, I think that it makes sense why it's so much higher than that $400 mark. I wish it was less, but I understand why it's more. That doesn't mean that people are going to buy it. Just because it does cost more doesn't mean that people will buy it. So do I recommend this to the average person? No. Sorry, he's still up there. But no, I don't recommend this to the average person. This is crazy, right? You have to specifically want your knife to look like an alien. You have to specifically want an integral. And you have to specifically want premium materials and premium manufacturing. A knife made for very few people, and very few people will be interested in it. It makes sense. It's the right relationship. So I think Rike is very aware of this. But the vast majority of you, do I recommend this knife? Absolutely not. It's just, and it's far too expensive to get, stuff like this. But if you are the type of person who's interested in all of these combined elements, will you be happy with this knife after having spent $465 on it? Yeah, you probably will. You probably will. In fact, truth be told, I love collecting weird stuff. I've got my practical stuff and that's fine, but my collection has tons and tons of what I would describe as weird, right? Stuff that I don't even really find visually appealing. I just really appreciate the complex elements and the interesting. I appreciate that it's different, right? I'm going to keep this green one, but I'm going to give away the plain Jane one, which is something I usually do on live streams usually every Friday at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So eventually you'll see this as a giveaway item. Either way, it's fun, it's wild, it's cool. Some people are going to like it. Most people are probably going to hate it, but that's how I feel. So anyways, thanks so much to Rike for sending it in. Links in the description. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.